HR adaptation, in particular in this new economy, you know, we went through that crater, is becoming more and more important as far as how do you rebuild your employees' confidence? How do you rebuild an organization that has been slashed and cut back, and you've had layoffs and redundancies, and you've cut costs as far as you can? Now what? And so the strategic role of HR, I think, more than ever, they need to be that cheerleader, that protector of the psyche that says, hopefully, in most organizations, the worst is over. We're rebuilding. It'll be different, you know, but it'll be great, and we want you to be a part of that. I think what organizations have really come to the conclusion is that we do have to get back to the basics of how do we re-engage our employees to better serve our clients, and organizations that have discovered that early, I think have got a great head start on their competitors. Well, I think the answer is yes. They did. They got it horribly wrong, but really not unexpected. I mean, they had huge margins, they had huge windfalls, they had lots of money, and so what do? I mean, you pass it out. So it was a mistake, I guess, that was bound to happen. Now I think what you're finding, particularly in the HR world, is it's better defined what is a compensation strategy and what is a reward and recognition strategy. You know, when you've got lots of money, they get blurred. And it's so easy to just say, well, let's just throw another bonus at that, or more cash. And so now I think they're really looking at saying, how can we, particularly with all the restrictions that are now being put on financial institutions, how can we get back to the little things that make a big difference? You know, there was Mr. Doyle spoke from ITV. What can you do? And he said, you know, a lot of little things, you know, and I love the way Barry Doyle put it. He said, we're doing little things, like we're painting the entrance, we're bringing back the free coffee and sweets. Those little things actually go quite a long way, because you can imagine if you're an employee and you're cutting everything and you've cut out free coffee, it must really be bad. You know, now you're bringing back the free coffee. I guess things are getting better. So those little things, I think, make a big difference. And I think in the financial sector, they're learning that and saying, look, we're not going to have these massive bonuses, but we can do a lot of little things along the way to build this culture that says, we're through the worst of it, we're back as a team, let's get going, let's dig our way out. When an HR director is charged with changing anything, there's going to be trauma. And particularly if you're saying, look, we're going to change our reward and recognition strategies, and I need money for that. And again, coming back to the financial sector, what happened in a lot of clients that we had is they shut off everything. So what happened was, even the day-to-day things were eliminated because the message was quite clear. We don't do this anymore. So now you're going back and saying, we need to reinstate these. How does an HR director go to a CFO and say, I need now X thousands of pounds to reinstate a program? This is where it's really critical that you have the data. Make sure you've done the research, that you've got the case studies, that you show the return. Intrinsically, I think most leaders know they've got to do something. The morale is low. If you've done a survey, reward and recognition is not the lowest, it's whatever lower than low is. And so they know you're going to be asking, but for how much you ask and how you position it is critical. Am I doing it strategically? Am I doing it to drive the bottom line? Can I show that by more reward and recognition schemes, I'm going to have fewer people quitting in the quality positions? You know, not just the people you wish would quit anyway, right? But those people that you really want to retain. Is it going to help us attract better talent? Is it going to help us up our satisfaction scores, our engagement scores, and our customer scores? Because this is what we found, and we published this in the Carrot Principle that we re-released with this global data. That's my shameless plug, by the book. Is that the more you recognized, not only did it improve those psychological scores that are so important to organizations, but it did impact the bottom line, the return on assets, the return on equity. If you're going into a CFO with that kind of data, saying, I know we're going to spend it, but there'll be a return. You've got a much friendlier audience there because it's not simply an HR want to have. It now becomes an organizational must have. And that changes the whole conversation. But very insightful, because I think that is the toughest thing that HR has, is how do I make the case? Intrinsically we know, give me the numbers, your odds go up. The way reward and recognition strategies, program schemes, the way they've changed most dramatically is, I think traditionally we had these compartments of recognition. We had a long service program, we had a sales program, we had a recruiting program, a certification program, whatever it might be. And they were very much siloed, and one leader would say, I need this, and so we'd do it. What I think is happening more than ever now is there's more a grander view, and said, look, how are these things interconnected? And so now you're having campaigns launched. Instead of saying, okay, we're just going to update this program or that program, you're saying, look, let's develop an integrated strategy. Let's brand it to our employees. For example, we do a lot of work with Pepsi. And Pepsi has a new program called True Blue. Great branding, but it's not just the sales program or the safe driver program. It's all the programs wrapped into one that says, if you're really True Blue, this is what you do. This is how it ties to our values. This is how it drives our business. This is how it drives your thinking, how it's going to engage your discretionary effort. And so it's all integrated so that managers now have a toolbox that's much more simplified and much more directed and much more targeted, much more strategic. And the companies that are thinking that way are having much more success and actually finding that they can actually spend less and get a higher return, because now 1 + 1 = 3. And I know that's bad math, but you get the gist. You're getting the synergistic push from all areas that really drive the business. And I think that's a big shift. Before it was program driven, and now it's strategy driven. And I think for HR directors, that's key, because now you're driving business. You're not just trying to protect the psyche of your employees. You're really now at the table saying, if we do this, we can gain this. And now your top leaders are fully engaged. The base is this day-to-day recognition. Now, when you think about that, a lot of managers will say, well, look, I come in and I'm very positive. I say, hey, great job. You're doing really well. But when you look at what good recognition is, and the question is, how do I make it sincere? Well, what we teach managers is make it specific. Make it frequent, make it specific, make it timely. So if I'm frequent in my praise, what that communicates is that this is important, because we talk about it a lot. But if I'm specific, now I'm giving you specific rules around why this is important and how to do it. And if I do it in a timely way, right after you've exhibited wonderful on-time delivery, or a zero defect for that session on the assembly line, or outstanding customer service. The closer the recognition is to the action, the more likely it is to be repeated. It's back to your psychology 101 class. So those kinds of things can be very simple, very easily done in verbal praise. We teach managers to write a handwritten note, which I'm a big fan of. A little retro, take the time, make it personal, pass it on. Those are the little things that if you do them properly, you don't have to get all mushy and emotional. Most managers aren't that way. But the more specific you are and the more targeted it is, the more sincere it comes across, because you've given me specific things. You haven't just given me a wave, dude, you rock. And I think that's important as far as the sincerity goes. And it does go a long way. But like anything, when you first start to do it, it's going to be awkward. You're not going to be good at it. So you need to do it. The more you practice, the better you play. And so we encourage managers, don't get frustrated. Keep at it, and you'll get the result you want. I don't think you ever revert back to where you were. You have this big correction and then it comes back, but it never comes back to the previous law. And I think that'll be positive as far as how employers treat employees. Certainly, if all of a sudden, the money comes flowing back, there's going to be that tendency because it's easy. But I don't think that lessons learned now will be so quickly forgotten. This was pretty traumatic. I think people are going to be less likely to just jump back to business as usual. When you talk about the next generation coming in and how will they be affected by all this, and are they going to be different? Yeah, every generation is different. I mean, I was a lot different than my dad, and he was a lot different than his dad. But I do think the expectations, because of this correction, have been radically changed. I don't think there's anyone coming into the workforce right now that thinks they're going to be the CEO in 3 years. And that used to be the case. Hey, where's my promotion? Where's my car? Where's my plane? And you'd say, well, where are the results? So I think the new kind of recognition with the new generation, if you can call it new recognition, is coming back to this frequency. I think the thing that we're finding more than ever is the crush of communication, that you really can't over-communicate. If you're texting or twittering or emailing or whatever you're doing, they need constant feedback. And I think recognition is a wonderful way to give that feedback with a little extra pop. So I think this generation isn't looking so much for the grand stuff anymore, but they are looking for that constant drip. And that is different than my generation, which was, it's good to have a job, you work hard, and then you'll be rewarded with overtime. This generation saying, no, give me constant feedback, make sure I'm on track, and I'm going to check 50 times today. Don't be annoyed. Just know that I need that kind of direction, and I think as long as you adjust that way, you're going to be fine. And again, I think that constant verbal praise, little things that you can do, really does accelerate the way you're communicating, and is very well received by this generation. Yeah. I really do think that HR's perception with an organization is driven by the director of HR. I mean, I've gone into organizations where HR is completely irrelevant, and I've been in organizations where the number 2 position in that organization is the HR person. And what's the difference? It's the person. Are you qualified? There was a speaker earlier today who talked about, do you understand the business side? Or are you just on the people side? And I think great HR directors are on both sides. They understand how the people side influences the business side. They can read a balance sheet. They know what discretionary dollars and campaigns, they know where all that's being done and who's responsible for it and what the long-term impact is going to be so that they can support that. So is the perception of HR changing? It's always changing. But I think it's the HR director more than anyone who impacts and influences that perception. Are you qualified? Are you smart? Are you continuing to learn? Are you continuing to add value? And the people that you're bringing up in your department, are they as keen as you are? And are they perceived as assets or liabilities? And so, yeah, I would encourage, keep reading, keep being educated, and live. Go talk to customers, go talk to line managers, find out what's really going on there so that you can intelligently support the business. And then I think you get a seat at the table. I don't think there's any question. You become someone that you want to counsel with as opposed to suffer through.